say, okay, Atin and Siddharth, this is now what we've heard and this is where we need to go. So Swati, the question that Atin and Siddharth have put to you is really about the export of plastics and how do you see this in terms of the evolving policy, the global treaty on plastics that we have? I mean, I heard your presentation and you were very clear and with a lot of information in terms of the pollution from the petrochemical industry itself and that complex. And obviously, India is positioning itself in terms of export, as you very clearly showed us. But what does this do in terms of what should be, therefore, our positioning, if I may ask you, at the International Forum on Plastics?
A few things. At the International Forum of Plastics, I think it's very important for us to say no virgin plastics. Say no virgin plastics.
No virgin plastics.
Yes, I think that's extremely important because if you say no petrochemicals is start. Petrochemicals is used for pharmaceuticals, is used for fertilizers, and a whole range of things. So how do you connect petrochemicals to plastics? And one way of doing it is to say no new plastic, so no new polymer, some kind of a backward calculation. I think that's one thing that we need to do. The other is we need to also tax polymer producers. I don't think they're being taxed for the impacts that they're creating. So I think that's the second position that we could take globally and in India. So yeah, these are I think the two big ones. Global plastics treaty apart, and there's value in global processes, no doubt. But in India, I think a position that we need to take is we're not going to produce poison and poison our rivers and farms and people just so that a private enterprise can earn their profit, because much of the polymers are privately owned. So private profit not at our cost. So I think that is something that we do.
And from the remaining community, how do you see the first? I mean, obviously, what Swati is saying is about the production part of it. Now, it could also be argued that pollution is something that happens in all industries. Control it, okay? But I thought also the very powerful point that you were making was, as oil gets less used in transport, you will see more oil used in the manufacture of polymers. That's really the point that should be something that should be discussed more.
The other policy part, I think, is that the government, without really proving correlation, says the greater the GDP, the greater the plastic use by people. Now, this is quite baseless. I have not yet read a government document which finds causes to connect with it. Right? So I think bursting that bubble that you need polymers or petrochemicals for development in a country is something that needs to be studied and responded to. I don't think there is a ready answer with it, but that will have to be a nuanced argument that we will have to build and respond to the argument that is thrown at us. So it's an area of exploration which I don't think civil society yet has engaged and done. So I think that bubble needs to be addressed at some point.
No, I agree with you. I don't think any one of us has really looked at the downward side of plastics. We've always looked at the upward side, and I think your presentation was definitely very eye-opening from that perspective. I think it'll be interesting to see the issues that come up. But let me sort of move on, and then we can bring some of this together. Nandini, the whole question about plastic neutrality. Siddharth spoke about it, you spoke about it. And although the law does not define plastic neutral and collection does not ensure recycling, how do we actually, what would be our advice that we should give to the ministry in terms of how do you ensure that this greenwash does not happen? And my question really is, what is the information that we should be asking the MOEF to put more clearly on their EPR portal which would help us to understand what's happening with the plastic neutrality of companies.
Just to clarify, I did not mention anything about neutrality.
No, you didn't, Siddharth. Siddharth, sorry, Anthony. Siddharth.
That's okay, but does your question still?
My question still stands in terms of, obviously for us, the biggest issue is to make sure that, yes, there are companies which will have now performance-based targets. They will be users and they are required to take back the plastics and recycle. The big gap that, at least from what when I've also gone out and seen and spoken to people, the gap is one between what exactly do you produce, how much do you produce, and therefore the question of the percentage of what you're taking back. Are you taking back 100%, 50%, 20%? How to verify how much do you actually produce? The other is the gap between, okay, how much do you take back? And what does it mean in terms of, even if you're collecting it, how does it mean that you're recycling it? The gap between taking it back and recycling. What kind of better accounting should we have in the country so that we can get better idea and a better handle on this?
So the data reporting mechanism, of course, is the ultimate.
Yes.
The ultimate way in which it should happen. I'm not, I have to confess, very familiar with the current the process that's being followed by the CSE. I have not seen that in detail, but I can only do a comparison with what we are demanding of companies through the fact. And I realize that may not address your question, but it will give you some idea. The reporting mechanism there is not just quantitative, but it's also by resin. So I think that might give a much better idea of, I'll tell you what companies are afraid of. They're afraid of blame and shame. And many people have said this very directly. One could argue about it and say that, they have a valid point, you shouldn't point fingers, etc. But the fact is, and I speak here as an individual, the fact is it's true. The data is out there, the stuff is out there. So one possible way of tackling it, and again, I'm going back into my personal opinion on this, is start somewhere, at least mandate some kind of reporting mechanism which has these details, which puts out a cumulative progress towards something rather than individually naming companies. So I know this is not a very satisfactory answer, and it's probably not addressing what you asked.
So Nandini, the fact is that there is now, and I would also look for some convergence between what you're doing at CII and what CPCB is doing, for instance. It would be good to see that happening together. So what CPCB has done, and Siddharth, you may be at a better position to add on to this, maybe you should come here so that you're also visible to everyone, is they have asked all companies to give a voluntary declaration of how much they produce, number one. Then they have asked them to say, and then CPC, and then the ministry has given these targets saying in the first year, you are required to take back 25%, next year 35%, the following year 45%. My problem, and that's been my question with Siddharth, has been, firstly, obviously, if I don't know how much you produce, a target becomes meaningless. So if I say it's 25% of what? And that has been the question. Now, how do we get a better handle on what they produce? That is the first thing. The other is, I have a target to take it back. And but whether that material is going in for recycling and what kind of recycling is also a question mark. And right now, the law gives them a window of 2 years when they can take it back and when they can actually have to recycle. And my biggest fear is that, and we've written about it and spoken about it, is in those 2 years, what are you supposed to do? Put it in the sea, throw it in the sea? Where are you going to collect it? Where is it going to go? And even when I say recycling, I don't have the granular information about what we talked about. Where is it going in for secondary? Is it going in for tertiary? If it is going in for tertiary, is it which cement plant is it going into? So normally when companies have such requirements, they are required also to give those certificates to say, I mean, when we did our green rating project, we saw all companies having to give certificates. I've sold it to you. For instance, even in biomedical waste, there's a good tracking system where you know from one end to the other where does that waste go. The case of plastic, that is where I think it would be, I mean, it just, I feel that it has too many holes in it right now. And maybe one of our requests would be, if at CII, if there can be a conversation on this and see how can some of these gaps be fixed. But I can see Saloni, I can see Anshu, if anyone wants to add to this, because this is at the root of everything else we take on. The question about credible data, how much we produce, where does it go? I'm going to ask everyone. This is this is one question that bothers me a lot. So
first, let me clarify in my understanding of this 2 years. So the reason, and we were, I have made this recommendation that put some timeline. So पहले जो target थे plastic waste foods में, there was no कि target किस base पे निकालना. What happened with the new rules is at least you look at historical data of 2 years, calculate your averages, basis that you calculate the target. So there was a, otherwise what industry was doing, I mean, practically was forecasting what I will sell in this year, and basis that the targets have been calculated, so you never had a fixed number. So that's the reason why this change, and it's I think it's a good change.
Okay.
That now you have historical data to rely upon and stuff. So coming back to the issue that you have just raised, I think this is beyond plastics. I think this is more of a larger problem that we are facing across waste categories. I would call it an APR sort of a problem in this sense. That until unless we bring radical transparency in the system, and I'm really saying radical in a way that it creates deterrence. Today, that deterrence is not there. People, across stakeholder group, I'm saying whether it's a PRO, recycler, brands, whosoever, the data is very fuzzy when it goes onto the system. And even in that, there is no justice being done to that data even in this new format because it's just pen and paper, and now it's just going digitally. But the kind of data sets that are required are still not being requested, and the kind of interlinkages, the kind of analysis that needs to be done to really make sense out of it, that what is happening is still not there. So, for example, the costs, I've been continuously talking, who is spending, what's the cost of fuel going circular? And are these costs, are there a reference costs? Like today we have facing a race to the bottom across, whether it's e-waste, plastic, we'll see the same in batteries, in end of life vehicles, the same thing. सबसे सस्ते पे करेंगे. Now what does that mean? Essentially कुछ नहीं करेंगे. And fake काम करेंगे. And the whole ecosystem is, it's not a problem of a brand or it's the whole ecosystem which is muddied in this. So I think one of the core things that you were asking earlier, what should CSE do? I think go back to some of the things that you were always doing, fact finding, vision, and publishing it all out. I think even a few cases published with very clear data sets would send a very strong deterrent signal that we can't do this. Like one of the speakers also just said, everyone is very much worried about what their bill is. And just a few stories, and I'm saying across sectors, whether it is batteries, whether it is, batteries is another challenge which is going to come in a few years. And it already is. In lead acid batteries, the real data is almost 15 crore liters of acid is going on a daily basis or a yearly basis in the regular water bottles. So this is the, once you return your batteries, and we did a whole analysis of, so I have a basis of this number. But none of the rules, see, these issues are being addressed. Another challenge that I see is absence of a knowledge body to make the circular economy work. We don't have a space where right expertise, and right is the key part. We have experts of all varieties, but where deep scientific knowledge is being applied to solve the problem, and then the policy making is based on this knowledge. So if CSE could play a central role in establishing that basis, and it could be a group of organizations who come together to make this, I think that platform is really needed for that radical transformation to happen.
Thank you. Thank you. Saloni?
Thanks, Sunita. I think that's really the elephant sitting in the room that we're talking about. And I'm so glad you brought it up because France has been working in this sector, all of us have been, and certainly UNDP has been, and there are concerns there. So as far as the target fixing is concerned, I think that may not be such a big concern because somewhere, at least for big organizations, it can also be linked to their financial reporting. And I think so somewhere, some kind of mechanism of verification of the total production or the material that they're putting out in the market is possible. However, now the challenge really is that
So Saloni, just let me take that because I've been asking Siddharth to put that together. Replace our databases. Let's take a company, makes chips, okay? Established, completely. Now, we don't have, there is no bifurcated database of how many chips have been sold in India. Chip packets have been sold. I said GST. मेरे दिमाग में था GST में तो होगा. GST का data is not available. And GST का भी data जो है वो कहते हैं, at least when we did the honey story, I remember, because we don't even know how much honey is sold in India. So we were trying to figure out कि honey, simple thing, अगर honey कितना बिकता है. So we said GST is the only way that we'll be able to find, but that GST number is not available. So I think, unless either we say, okay, fine, let's just go by, you say so many packets of, so much plastic packaging you have done. I mean, it's just a percentage question for me. I mean, if you're saying 25% of what? And so if we can somehow we can push the ministry on this to say, get some better data on production. How do we get that?
So my sense out here is that even if this data is not available in the public domain for organizations like the organizations present here, CSE included, for the ministry to be able to pull up that data and to be able to verify it at their end, I don't think that should be such a challenge. And really the numbers that they have out there, I mean, for a company to report that this is the total production or this is the amount of product they put out in the market, it's really the onus is on the regulator to ensure that that number is authentic and they have some mechanism of verification.
Okay, good point. So that's the first.
Yeah.
Then the second is percentage of what you have to take back.
So once the regulation has put those numbers, or rather I would put it a progressive target against the material that is being put out in the market, I think the key to ensure and to really stem this race to the bottom and all these other challenges will be to see a regulator. So the ministry's approach or their vision for this is that we try and bring in place a market mechanism which will drive, and the market in itself will figure out, will do the will do the price discovery. And that's because different countries are working with different models. In Europe, they've fixed a price. They have PROs, they fixed a price, and they're asking companies to contribute a certain X amount of price for the waste that they're putting out. The ministry has taken an approach that perhaps we don't want to get into into that price discovery and let the market do its own price discovery. The challenge here is to ensure that while as a regulator, you want to have less governance, more government, less governance, but really to identify those smart touch points to ensure that the governance is robust. Because we all understand who've been working in this space that the regulatory capacity of the ministry, the CPCB or State Pollution Control Board, or their regional offices is highly limited and the burden is piling up. And it's all getting loaded on the existing resource. So they have to find smart and I would say discerning touch points to identify really at what points we want to go back and check to verify that actually the numbers that are getting reported against in these certificates are really a reflection of the actual physical flow of material. And I think that's very interesting. And I think perhaps CSE in a constructive way can actually engage to really help the ministry identify these touch points.
So March apparently is when the final numbers will come out, and then they are given till May, 3 months I think beyond March to do final trading and verification. So I think it would be good for us, and I agree, and maybe we should stay in touch, see how we can put forward a more deeper analysis to be able to move this process step by step ahead so that we can get But any other ideas on this? Any other points on this? Yes, please. Harsh. You're in the thick of it.
Yeah, but I'm going to use that and maybe talk about the companies and their data reporting.
Ah.
The data is out there, we obviously know it. Right? It's not like it doesn't exist. And it's being reported in different ways in two different places. Like I say, the GST, they report exactly how much they're buying, how much GST they're spending on what. It's a click of an Excel sheet to say, this is the quantum of plastic that I have purchased. As long as every company is required to report exactly what amount of polymer they have purchased, what amount they have given out after their post-production release, who they have given it out to, exactly in the way that they are saying. And post-consumer is not a complicated, but post-production to the factory se baहर जाता है. You're able to know what is the balance that is left out into the market that is gone into making the packaging, and you have a number from which you start working towards the 50% or 60%. Yeah, and there's in terms of how to calculate, that's a clear number for us. And if somebody lies, I don't, as an organization, ever rely on my GST filings. I know the minimum cash fee they will open every single tally account and check it. It should have the same level of debt effect if you do lie in these filings. The impact should be the same as lying in your GST filing. So you probably will lie and it's not the government that is coming.
The problem is, Harsha, when the ministry tells me that they will take very strong deterrent action, punitive action, and I'm sure their intent is there. I'm not at all, saying that they are not. They want to be very firm about this. Problem is, how will they take that action when they don't know how much you were supposed to collect, and even if you said 25% of a certain number. Verifying whether that collection happened or not is going to be very, very tough as I see it. So I'm still wondering how this system can be improved. I'm not looking at the problems. And Saloni, you're absolutely right. I mean, they've tried to put, and they've gone through a number of consultations. They've done, which I think is, from their point of view, a system which is light on governance, and rightly so. Our capacities are limited. The question now is, what do we do next to improve this system? And how do we take that stepwise approach? Because the objectives are clear. The objectives are also with the ministry are clear. That essentially what they're looking at is the plastic that is produced and put out in the market should be collected. And the companies who have put it out have the responsibility to collect it and to safely reuse it or dispose it. That's essentially the bottom line. Now, putting that together, the number chain is going to be the big issue. And I guess that's something that it's the first year. We should not, we should track this and carefully see what is happening and then see what is further that we can do. But that's where, Nandini, maybe a discussion when you have with the companies to see how could this system become more robust? That would be very good. Because the objective is the same. The idea is the same. Okay. I think, Mayur, I heard you speak on the compostable plastics. The question that I think we were also raising is, how does the industry and your association respond in terms of this labeling? And also, I'm deeply concerned that there may be good companies doing good compostable plastic, but there will be a lot of fake companies doing a lot of plastic which is not compostable, full of some additive, as Siddharth has written, which will leach into the ground, create the same problems. So how will you as an association manage, number one, to weed out the bad guys? And two, what kind of recommendation would you support us as we are asking the ministry to do some labeling on compostable plastic?
You're absolutely right, ma'am. This is a concern which we are facing, and we have some solutions for that. In fact, we have proposed a solution to MOE and CPC both. One of the solutions which we have proposed that to give one color code to compostable products, especially products which are in the ambit of single-use plastic and alternatives. So I have proposed, we have proposed light green color for compostable packaging. So internationally also this color has been used for compostable packaging. So if we can use this color, especially only and only for compostables, and it is very easy for replicas and to differentiate between a regular plastic and compostable plastic. So one identification would be the light green color, or for that matter, any color which is not used by any other conventional plastic or something like that. Other than that, there's some identification marks on labels on the bags, which even now we are putting up. So there are QR code scanners and all, which can be, the back can be scanned all of that.
But Mayur, if I may push you a little bit on that, push back a little bit. I mean, the fact is, the problem with compostable plastics is there is this huge range of what could make a compostable plastic and what goes into it.
Right.
Okay. There is no product specification. Even if nothing else, you have a BIS product specification for 99% of the product. So at least you know this is the range, but this is the product spec. In the case of compostable plastic, I have had people telling me, ये कौन से बना है, ये किसी और starch से बना है, ये किसी additive से बना है. Everything is in the range of what is compostable plastic. It's good, but it's also bad. Because then you can, I mean, it's good because you're getting a lot of innovation, but it's bad because then you, without those specs, you don't know what somebody is labeling as green, light green, and what should not be light green.
Yeah, so actually, without registration of Central Pollution Control Board, one cannot make manufacture and sell in the market. That's a mandatory norm fixed by Central Pollution
So
Control Board.
you have to register with CPCB.
Yes, exactly.
Compostable
Yes.
plastic.
So we have to get a certification done by CPET, which takes a good 8-10 months for the complete laboratory test. And then all the documents have to be submitted to Central Pollution Control Board. And only certified manufacturer or sellers are permitted to sell in the Indian market. So that way it is very controlled that way. But the problem seeps in where some loose terms like biodegradable comes, loose terms like green and eco-friendly comes. So all that has to be addressed. Like they should not be allowed to mention on the packaging or the bags if the government be really strict on it. So we have been time and again asking government to lay out some rules so that only very particular terms can be mentioned on the packaging of compostable, which is allowed by Central Pollution Control Board. For as far as the standard is concerned, only 17088 is the standard which is allowed in Indian standard, Indian market and in the nation. All other standards which are being used are sorry to say, but they are not allowed and they're illegal. So that is one more challenge we are fighting it out. We have to really fight with the greenwashing, as you were also mentioning in your opening remarks. So these 2-3 points are really, that's why the whole customer, buyer, the authorities, everybody is confused. So some sort of clear guidelines from Central Pollution Control would really help. So these words like eco-friendly, biodegradable, oxo-biodegradable, all these should not be allowed for any manufacturer to put it on the bag. Only compostable and the standard, which is 17088, should be allowed. Then the whole confusion would be eased out to some much extent.
Any other comments on
Ma'am,
this?
I just wanted to add on the earlier point you were making. If you just allow.
Please.
Yeah. So you were saying there were too many gaps in the plastic waste management. So because we've been working in a very district level also, the problem is unauthorized manufacturers. The registered manufacturers are complying, some are complying 50%, 70%, some are complying 80%. But what about the unregistered manufacturers? So my suggestion would be, this is a big problem. There are thousands factories in Mumbai which are running in shanties and the slums of Mumbai. They are manufacturing every single thing under the sun which is in the banned ambit, but they are not registered. So no authorities would go there. I mean, sometimes they go, but most of the time they don't because of various reasons. So my submission would be to have them easy onboarding on the EPR portal or on the system. First, like what we did with Aadhaar card and what we did with GST, like with minimum documents, just come in and get in onboarded. So they are very scared to get onboarded on EPR because they have no documents to submit. अब किसी के पास 5 साल पुराना एक पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड का सर्टिफिकेट होगा, बाद में they not renew it because they are doing things in a way they उनको कभी मिलेगा भी नहीं. So my submission would be to make rules very easy, paperwork so easy. We being in an association, we have one guy who kind of support our members to get themselves onboarded into EPR.
So an educated person who is doing recycling, in a shanty would never come on board. And that data we can get data and we can, get a percentage of how much to be, put in EPR and how much they're doing. But what about the unregistered dealers? There are thousands in Mumbai, imagine pan India. So my submission would be ease of onboarding for everybody who doesn't have many documents. For minimum documents, if they just get onboarded on the EPR, then they will get confidence and then they will get, they can, like what we did with GST, exactly.
Yeah, for Mayur, the biggest problem in all this plastic, all recycling businesses, it's a question of cost. Okay, let's be clear. That's why the rich world, the industrialized world is always sending stuff to us to recycle because their cost of recycling, their cost of environmental compliance is too high for them to afford. If you put the cost of environmental compliance with the cost of labor standards, with the cost of worker standard on the recycled good, nobody can afford recycling at all. Okay, which is why all their containers come to us. Now, our trouble is that the organized industry is not able to compete with the unorganized industry. The unorganized industry, even now, Tikri, where I have learned most of my recycling businesses, is in the unorganized sector. And that is massive. But that's where the labor cost, if I go there, go to my middle class environmentalist, वहाँ जाएगा तो कहेगा, अरे क्या घाव labor cost है, क्या conditions में लोग काम कर रहे हैं, कितना pollution है यहाँ पर, कोई human rights नहीं है यहाँ पर, वो सारा वो होगा. The minute you raise those labor standards, their competitive advantage goes. Okay, then the cost of recycling also becomes now either we as a society again agree, which I think we should pay a cess for recycling. For every material we use, we should have a top up which says this. We have after all an education cess. We should have a recycling cess on every material that is used. That then at least starts incorporating the cost. But where will it go right now? Ideally, my view, that cess for recycling should be collected and should go to Tikri to say we are paying all the workers that extra money for their children's education. Yeah, but that unfortunately we are not able to do because in the business of pollution, which we all are, in Delhi, we all gasp for breath in winter, but that's only because all the work we do in the authorized industrial area. And most of Delhi works in the unauthorized industrial area. So that's a real gap in policy, which we are not able to figure out because it is about cost. वहाँ पर कुछ भी जला लेते हैं. So that's really where I think a lot of the recycling business, as I see it, and the more we focus on it, and that's really something I hope CSE will continue to do, is to focus on recycling. And I hope you will keep working with us on it, that we can bring. Yeah, Pranchu, I first had Nandini, and then can we give another mic? Can you give it here, then we can share half and half.
Just a little point on composting. I just wanted to clarify that the composting tag or label that we have right now, complying with 17088, if I'm not mistaken, it refers to industrial composting. Is that right?
Oh, interesting.
And thereby hangs a tail actually, because even if it's collected separately, you need to set up the infrastructure for composting industrially, and then educating people about this, because it should clearly say this is not home compostable. This is the perception of people. perception.
बिल्कुल सही है. Very good point. I also read it in the report and I realized.
And this needs solid conditions. You need some 50-60 degrees Celsius with humidity, a certain pressure of oxygen, etc., etc. So it's not a joke composting industry. But if there is a clear pathway of collection, segregation, and a forward linkage to an industrial composting, go for it. That's the way to do it.
I want to add something.
I'll come to you. Just after she finishes, and Pranchu, if you want to add to this point, and otherwise I will come to you. Yes.
The second thing is that with
And Varunji, I understand you have to leave. I will ask right after this. I will come to you after this discussion. Yes.
What he talks about, what he said about biodegradability is that area is a very, very dangerous area for us to enter. And I don't hesitate to use that word at all. It has to be entered into with great caution because of the large variability in definition and actual practice. To my knowledge, as a chemist today, it is not possible to produce a polymer with a carbon backbone that is biodegradable. It's thermodynamically not possible. So additives, etc., yes, but caveats over there, which we're all aware of, microplastics, etc. So careful, sensible, cautious use in selected applications only. I think it must come with those caveats, and then you have something to go. Also, with the whole issue of making all SUPs compostable, I have a bit of a doubt there as someone who's thinking on scientific lines. Where is the reduce then? If we are always providing a substitute for SUPs, where are we invoking reduce? And you're merely shifting the burden from polymers to some other resource. So I think these basics maybe need to come out with it.
Okay. Before I come to you, there was a gentleman at the back. You want to add to this? The whole question about compostable?
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, I'm Amit Jain from Association of Compostable Plants. Actually, I just wanted to add that in India, most of the what we are saying compostable in general terms, because in compostable plastic also there are many varieties of plastics, like they are made from PLA, they are made from PPAT, they are made from PBS, PHA. There are many types of it. Only the PLA is actually industrial compostable. The PBAT, PHA, these are most of these are home compostable. And the perspective is, and one more thing I want to add is that in 17088 IS standard, the industrial composting facility that is required for composting is equivalent to the municipal composting facilities. So if it reaches to the municipal sites, then that is equivalent to the industrial composting. And then the problem can be solved. But the problem is there.
Municipal
segregation problem is
composting.
there.
Municipal composting.
Municipal
Not sites,
composting,
yeah.
not landfill sites. You're talking about municipal composting.
Yeah.
So it's
And one more thing is that if
हम लोग कभी डाले थे हम लोगों ने बैग भेजे थे हमने कंपोस्ट में डाला था कभी वो सड़ा ही नहीं
उसमें मैम अगर नाइट्रोजन की अवेलेबिलिटी रहती है, like some leaves are there, some things are there, then they compost easily.
नहीं हमारे
Food waste is
में
there.
सब कुछ है फूड वेस्ट भी है वो भी है सब कुछ है
Subject to further discussion.
So I think the point we are trying to raise is, and I think there are 2 points here, Mayur, which we could come back to and maybe do some more thinking about. One is, what is the purpose of that compostable product that we are making? Because if we are going to, I mean, maybe what you need is a better, not just infrastructure, better product line, a clearer product line. You don't have to substitute everything, okay? Maybe the production where you really, for instance, let me tell you, one of the biggest, we were in Tanzania recently and it's incredible. I really have to, I've been writing about it, really going to hold that up as an example. You know, Lake Victoria didn't have a single plastic bag. The entire city of Dar did not have a single plastic bag on the ground. And that's because they have 100% ban on carry bags, 100%. It's not micron based, it's 100%. Now they are also facing, they were asking us, because we're working with the Environment Protection Agency there. They're saying we are getting a lot of demands for these alternatives. They're saying we are finding that this is becoming another problem for us, these alternatives. And say the cleanliness that we have now seen in Dar and other places, we don't want to lose that and have another littering problem that we have. So I think to some extent, maybe your association can help to, you know, we don't want you to become, you know, you're a friend, you have the right word, compostable, green, you know, all the rest of it. We'd like you to stay there. So maybe as we are sort of looking at it, is there a product line which is needed for compostable, which is where it works towards? And for instance, in my view, it should not be used for carry bags.
Right.
Okay, because that's where the real problem is. That's where the masses, everyone uses a carry bag, and that we can find all alternatives, whether it's paper, whether it's cloth, whether it's something else. You don't have to have a plastic carry bag, but that's the bulk of the problem. Okay, so maybe that's something. But Varun, from the ministry, how do you view this discussion? And it's a chemicals and fertilizers is not, I mean, you're the core of it in many ways.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, this is my first interaction with such a large audience. So please excuse me if I am somewhere wrong. Ma'am, actually, अगर हम देखें नेचर का बिल्ड देखें
हाँ,
तो हम बेसिकली पॉलीमर से बने हैं इवन हम भी
फिलोसॉफिकली तो हम थोड़े वरुण जी अभी तो पॉलीमर की बड़ी दिक्कत
मैं
हो रही है
पॉलीमर से ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम जो है अगर आप अंडरस्टैंड करें तो गवर्नमेंट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से प्रॉब्लम इज नॉट ओनली द पॉलीमर अगर आप प्लास्टिक को बोलें तो प्लास्टिक एक कैटेगरी है बट एक केमिकल कॉकटेल है it's a chemical cocktail which is made of the polymers additives now we are seeing only in a perspective of plastic so we are talking in the plastic perspective but if you see around yourself you are facing the chemical cocktail particularly. So it's a different kind of chemicals you are exposing right now so you are inhaling you have the dermal interaction also so chemical is continuously interacting right now when I am talking or it's around 20 and 30 chemicals you are currently interacting. So the major problem is that chemical. So we need to understand that government should develop that data, toxicity data, particularly toxicity data related to all chemicals. And that awareness should be generated by the people. Because as you see, all the laws are developed in India is majorly citizen-centric. When the citizen demanded it, we give them. So particularly, and we are the consumer, and we are going to be the largest consumer of the polymers, plastics, chemicals, everything we are the largest consumer. So basically, we have to develop the data, toxicity data with respect to all the chemicals. Now, if you see globally, there is only data generated on the individual set of chemicals. So only individual chemical which is giving the toxicity data, we are only talking about that only. But what happening? We are exposing with the multiple chemicals. So we are exposing with the chemical cocktail. So we need to limit our toxicity data with that threshold that all the chemicals which we are exposing. So our limit should be below that. So basically we are already overflowing our cup of the threshold value of the toxicity. So we need to analyze that in a point of view. Thank you.
No, I agree, Varun. The question is, what will the ministry do to help us on that?
Like I said, it should be consumer
We all appreciate that. But I did hear that the ministry was now preparing a chemical database. So you are looking at toxicity
Yes,
and
ma'am.
chemicals. I heard that.
One rule that is chemical management and
That's
safety
right.
rules. Ma'am, basically the currently government of India is only looking after the physical hazard. There is majorly chemical is dealt by the various ministries in the silos. Basically, if you look at the pesticide, that is dealt by the agriculture ministry, only the toxicity data. They are analyzing it, but they are not able to implement it. Because if you see their regulatory aspect, there is some issues, there is some policy gap, and that law is also not amended till date. And if you see other chemicals which are hazardous in their nature, and we don't know which chemical is more hazardous. Ramesh rightly pointed out the chemical which is present in the plastic in the form of additives, which is really a problem. So we are not looking at it, we are looking at the waste problem.
Yeah.
But that is a secondary problem. Primary problem when you produce the chemical.
Exactly.
And from there you start the problem.
Mhm.
So you need to focus on the first part. Second part will automatically taken care of.
No, very fair. No, very fair.
We are not focusing on the first part. We are focusing only on the secondary part because we see in the physical form.
Hmm.
that that chemical effect you will not see in the physical form, because it's a long-term effect. So that's how we are. So Environment Ministry is handling some hazardous chemicals through MSIC, which is only concentrated on the physical hazard, which is way older, because GHS is already revised and revision 9 is already come up,
So-
but they do not revise the rules.
So if we as civil society wanted to look at all chemicals produced in India, what would be the way of doing that? Would you have a database of all chemicals produced in India?
Currently, government does not have any
Don't
database,
have a database.
proper database which is required to be integrated in all forms. We are not, we cannot work, the chemical data set in the silo will not work. Because if we are generating data on the silo, it will not work.
Swati, you want
So
to
I
add
was
something?
busy, I think, I mean, it's encouraging to hear you say this because that you're from the ministry. On the other hand, when a coal to PVC plant is coming up in an already toxic heaven, like Mundra, the environment appraisal committee is giving the clearance.
But
So,
Swati, it's a different process.
No,
Ma'am,
I finish, I finish.
Let her finish, let her finish.
So I understand that there is a bunch of very passionate people like you who understand the science of it, the chemicals, the problems with it, and this one group of all of you who are doing this research. And then there's another group of people who are taking the decisions of what projects will be passed and what will not be passed. How can you all coordinate? Because you understand from what I hear, you understand the problem. How can you help your own colleagues, for example, not pass projects like coal to PVC,
Or at
which
least
is
make better
10 times
decisions.
worse than oil to PVC or even just coal to power. Coal to PVC is possibly the most toxic thing and it's coming up in Mundra. So, I mean, how can people like you who understand the science help the politically minded decision makers see the day, see the light?
Ma'am, if I set aside the political point of view, we cannot work in silos.
No, you can't.
Because our industrial development is a necessity, because you need the demand. Actually, people
Okay, Varun, sir.
create the demand.
पर सवाल ये है देखो
Ma'am, I
Swati is very
I
passionate.
replied, even
हाँ,
she raised the good question regarding, if I showing the slides, which is also seen by some QPC members also. So I want to just focus on that. If Environment Ministry is not looking after the environment, how can we can expect that the plastic industry is looking after that? Because they are primary responsibility is the environment and the clearances which is required for this kind of project. So actually we need that, and we cannot avoid them. We have to learn how to manage them.
absolutely.
And
I agree. I think
Managing is
pollution,
very sad, sir. The worst kind of projects are cleared.
but Swati, I think to be fair, there are two different issues here. There is an issue of management of pollution, which is the pictures you showed. Now, those pictures are clearly about mismanagement of pollution. Okay? Where somebody who's supposed to make sure that that does not happen is somewhere failing their jobs, as I see it. The law is very clear on it, that should not have happened. Okay? The institutions are very clear that should not be happening. Okay? If it continues to happen, it is wrong. The other part of what you're raising is there are issues on which we don't, there are two issues here. One is there are products that we should not be producing at all because they are highly toxic and they should not get produced. Now that's where I think what Varun was saying makes a lot of sense to me. Because today in India, we do not have any product listing. We have process listing and we have EIAs that are given on the factory. So the factory EIA will look at whether it's a chemical factory, what kind of chemicals will it discharge, what kind of chemicals should get controlled. We do not have any system in India, which I think is something which I thought Varun was alluding to, and which is what I thought is important also now, is to come up with a product classification, which is, and that's where the question of the listing of chemicals, which chemicals should be produced, which chemicals should be not produced. You know, we have that in pesticides, you very correctly said, but the pesticide one also has problems in terms of enforcement. But DDT तो ban हो गया ना, ये हुआ कि वो नहीं बनना है. We don't have anything with the rest of the chemical.
That's true. On the other hand, adding to it, so if
Huh.
you're saying what you're saying and then what you're saying about the product listing, I think the third element is about cumulative impact. Right now, there is no cumulative impact assessment
Absolutely.
going on. So when you
Well,
look
we
at a
do
Gulf
have
of Khamba,
We do have, no, I'm sorry. We do have a cumulative impact, something that was started very well by the government.
yes,
which
but they're
was-
not doing it. For example,
So again,
Gujarat,
they're not doing it.
the
They're not
Gujarat,
doing it, but there is a cumulative
in fact,
impact
the
which is
Gujarat government
calculated.
has a framework for a cumulative impact
Yes.
assessment, especially for Gulf of Kutch.
Exactly.
Neither has it been implemented, nor when the
Or you have
EAC
SEPI, or you have SEPI.
Yes.
SEPI is a process to measure cumulative
Yeah, but the
impact.
point, ma'am, then is that when an EAC is giving clearance, they're not asking for a cumulative impact assessment to happen.
I agree.
So that's also an
No,
issue,
no,
and
I'm
and then a
disagreeing.
cumulative impact assessment of a chain, and then a cumulative impact assessment of a value chain. Both, I think.
No, absolutely. I don't think any one of us is disagreeing, but I'm just making the point, some of them exist. It's a question of the lack of ability to be able to implement it. SEPI does exist. Okay, SEPI was meant for cumulative impact. And that's why a lot of projects were stopped in Vapi, because Vapi was seen to be over polluted. But then, of course, there are other reasons why Vapi got opened up, why SEPI got diluted. Okay?
It went off the list of.
Yes, Alon.
I know this is a digression from plastics.
It is, and I want to get back to
Ma'am,
plastic.
actually-
This is frankly a discussion which will go nowhere. I know, I've been in this for so long, I've been in this is not going to go. Let's discuss something that we may be able to fix a little bit. So go ahead, Saloni.
Ma'am, if
Huh.
Ma'am, if you are, if someone is saying that the government is not working,
Huh.
because I am also the part of the citizen, so I am also consuming the same thing which you are also consuming. And if citizen is not aware about the impact of any chemical which is using, then nobody will help them because he is using it, the chemical. If you talk about the radiation of the mobile phone, it's okay, but nobody talks about the plastic which is used in the mobile, which is used continuously exposed. Nobody is talking about. Nobody is talking about any other chemical exposure, toxicity, their toxicity impact, how you are impacted from them, because it's a long-term effect. It comes in your generation, it comes in your next generation. So it will have a
So
time.
Varun, my only question to you is still, and maybe we can keep the discussion going, because I understood that the ministry was beginning to do a chemical database, which would allow us to have a product classification of chemicals in the country, which are being produced, which then could be fed into the EIA process and other processes to say which chemicals are very toxic and should not be produced. Maybe that's something that we should, aim to work on, because that would definitely help us, whether it gets implemented or not, it would help us to take one step ahead.
Right, ma'am. Actually, in a science perspective, that is the right approach. And even the Western countries are going ahead with one step. They are talking about the mixture effect.
मिक्सचर में बाद में आऊंगी, पहले तो प्रोडक्ट पता चले क्या
Yes.
प्रोड्यूस होता है इस देश
First,
में।
that is the problem.
फिर हम मिक्स करेंगे नहीं करेंगे पहले तो पता चले। Okay, let's get back to plastic. I'm really keen to get some handle on plastics today. So this whole question about MRF facilities, and one of the points that Siddharth made, that when they're when they are trying to now divert it to authorized recyclers, those recyclers are essentially not giving them a proper date and are putting pressure on them, something that Pranshu also alluded to. You need to go, yes. No, we will get back to you. We will get back to you on this. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. So, how, in your experience, how do we overcome this? I mean, the authorized recyclers, the MRF facilities, how do we get them to talk better to each other? How do we get that sorted out better?
Then I'll go back to the point that I made earlier, that we need to bring in a mechanism to ensure that the EPR certificate that a recycler is reporting should actually be a reflection of the material that he has received and actually recycled, processed, recycled and handed over to an eventual user of the recycled material. Because, and it's only when we ensure that the actual material flow happens and the EPR certificate is generated as a consequence of the material flow and material processing, that is the only way to, in some ways, link the benefit of the funds that are coming into the market because of this EPR obligation on the POs. And that's the only way to come, and that's the only way to pass on to a material public.
So, when I was at EPTA, one of the things that we were asked to do was to give a report to the court on a biomedical waste. And one of the recommendations we made, and that's been implemented now, I'm not there anymore, so I can't make the implementation. But I understand that a lot of it was implemented because we got the orders passed, was to basically get it barcoded right through and to make sure that there was a clear idea where each part was going. So, you had collectors from the hospital taking it to a facility, but then there is blue and there's white and there's yellow, and the question is, where is each? So that's the point you're making. That material flow has to be recorded. So how much of what you have collected and where is that gone? So a disaggregated number needs to be there, not just in terms of I've sent it for recycling, but when it goes to the authorized recycler, where is it come from? So you can also check how much was produced, but also where is the authorized recycler being able to, how have they disposed different types of plastic?
That too. And because you refer to biomedical waste, I worked extensively on it in Uttar Pradesh. And apart from actually doing ensuring material traceability from the point of generation, which typically would be a hospital or any other medical facility, to the CBWTF, and then eventually ensuring that the treatment process also happens at the CBWTF. So, because there is always the possibility that some of the waste could have just got dumped somewhere along the way. So ensuring that the CTF is also doing the material processing out there. And so one of the indicators we used at that point of time, so we said the payment will be made 90% on the basis of the collection and transportation, but 10% will be withheld, which will be paid only on the basis of a quarterly audit of the CTF facility. And the audit,
we asked for an online, because the whole question was also how high your incinerator is working, how many hours is it working. And for that, you can get an online monitor. So I tried to sort of create a system which was as easily to be monitored in that. But I'm just wondering, how would you bring it into the plastic field, Pranshu? What would you do better in the plastic field to improve traceability? What we're really talking about is traceability and recording.
Plastic is
Challenging.
in plastics, it is very challenging because you don't have what we call a material balance reports. So while there are data sets, you can be traceability to how it was collected, where was it collected, and for that technology is available. But what happened post recycling, how do you know? And for certain materials where recycling solutions exist, we should turn it into either a recycled material, if it goes back, you can trace it, so you have a material balance report. But if it's going for co-processing, you don't know how much has been burned. So that material balancing is becoming very difficult in plastic, and sometimes a lot of misreporting will happen just because of this. So I'll come back to also the point on MRF that you just mentioned. What I am facing with MRF, and and I'm always looking at from a producer's space.
Yes.
So considering EPR. So when a producer is making the decision, they are looking at if everything is the same from a government standpoint, what's the lowest cost of doing it. And MRI today is the most expensive option to even have.
Oh, really?
It would be the most expensive for anyone to go and invest in. So majority of the numbers that you see today, how is collection, recycling happening, is go to a landfill site, agree on with the municipality that we are going to pick up whatever is lying in landfill site, dump it on a truck, sell it to a waste-to-energy plant or to a co-processing unit, And all of that is just classified as plastic, whatever it is. And that is what we see in our survey.
Can EBL be claimed on that?
It is being claimed, that is how all the numbers are.
Kind of cycle.
So, and it is again, if we think about additionality, is it bad? The answer is no. At least, it is not piling up in
But
landfill,
I've
but
been
it is
to,
not.
I've been to those incineration plants where all this is happening.
That's another level of mess.
They can't incinerate all that, no?
Yeah.
उसमें construction waste भी है,
No, so
उसमें-
inert भी pick करते हैं. So this is generally combustible material.
Oh, yeah.
But this, yeah, so we are talking essentially of RDO. So RDO is being classified as in full plastic equivalent, entire amount is
Which
plastic.
is not necessarily what plastic.
No, it is not.
Yeah,
No,
it is
not. But anything that has a calorific value is being treated at par with plastic.
yeah.
So you mean say, when, after trommeling, and they have separated out all those different fractions,
Yes.
and they have set out what they're calling as the RDF fraction, that then companies are buying,
Yeah.
claiming EPR on it, and sending it to an incinerator plant.
Yes, it will be a co-processor, which is a cement kiln, or it could be a waste to exchange. If one were to, but this problem again will also come up in our MRF, because what do you do in MRF? You segregate, but you're still left with RDF, a better quality RDF, a better composition of RDF, but the problem still continues. So, and even in that, one can say, okay, some companies may say, I'm only going to pay 65% of this RDF, but the market reality is that the whole thing is being classified as plastic. So we are seeing that this is the lowest cost option. I
Interesting.
mean, इसके नीचे वाला ही कुछ काम नहीं हुआ के बना
Hmm.
या double accounting हो गया for the same waste.
Okay.
So, but if I were to look at it, this is the cheapest cost. Agree with the municipality, and municipality is charging anywhere between a few hundred rupees
Per ton.
per ton कि आप pick up कर लो.
Ah,
And they save their money because
Ah. Transport is always. the
transport is
cost.
saved. So it's a valid option. But if we were to create a hierarchy of what are the things to be done and how do you get some sort of a modulation
Hmm.
of this work, then for this you will only get half a point.
Hmm.
For a higher level you get a full point. So some sort of modulation will have to be applied. Because MRFs in such a system will never get prioritized. Because MRF में per kilogram cost आती है, a good MRF would be anywhere between 15 to 40 rupees per kilogram for plastic matters, even higher, depending on how much waste is coming. These,
Waste impression, the categories of waste that are coming to the MRF.
yeah, I'm talking of low value plastic essentially, LDPE, ML.
Even cost of collection and management.
But this is the question, Anshul, and I think Harshad, if you can, so if the cost of collection segregation is done by the city, let's say, like in Pune or other cities, and then the MRF is an intermediary point where this material is coming to, it's already segregated, sorted, category types are there, we have seen some very good MRFs, where cities are actually functioning in segregation, then the MRF actually has all the categories there. Then why should it be so expensive? Then should the arrangement with recyclers not be easier to do? Because then you should be able to, after all, it's a segregation which costs the most. There'll be some variety which can't go for recycling. I know that. वो तो फिर आप bundle करके plastic का करके उसको आप
The challenge
जितना वो
is there
करके
is no mechanism defined in the rules. जैसे पहले भी ULBs के बारे में बातचीत थी.
हाँ
You work in ULB, but how do you work?
हाँ यही तो
So,
बताएं हाँ
ULB से आप brands जाती है now. I would like to just empathize with the brand. Brands go to a ULB, वो कहते हैं कि हम तो tendering पे करते हैं काम. So you now I'm not a waste processing company, so I will not participate in the tender to manage. So how do you collaborate on a MRF level with
Very interesting.
and I mean we had a dialogue with almost 37 ULBs. On behalf of brands trying to create a solution where brands are willing to pay. Okay, we are bringing in the money. Can we now support? But because there is no institutional mechanism, no guidance to how to collaborate with the brand, so that's never came up, and it became a very grey sort of a system. So which never kind of would have worked anyhow. So if there is a very clear mechanism, if a MRF has to be supported, this is how a brand needs to participate. Then I think it would work in a single window system, because in collaborating with the urban local body, it's a nightmare. You start from the top and then it stops somewhere in the middle, and just to ऊपर आ जाएगा. But it's a single, no face sort of a system, probably it will start functioning very well.
अच्छा तुम्हारे यहाँ कैसे काम?
MRFs are a sore point, I'll be very honest. Most of the MRFs that you see out there in the country today are set up by ULBs through tendering, like you mentioned, owned and operated by large organizations. Even if they're a small organization, the contract size is so big that for us, it's a large organization. No informal sector participant can actually participate.
Take on a MRF.
MRF. Now, the UNDP has done small ones, and those are fine. Right? They've been small centralized, but the city level ones are all 50 tons, 100 tons per day. At that scale, you've created a vested interest that wants all the recyclables now, and is going to actively ensure that the dry waste is going to enter only and only the formal municipal system and come to him, and then he sells it. That's how he's going to remain profitable. Also, when he makes the pitch, when he files the tender, he has to be the lowest, and therefore he wants the highest quality of material that comes in. So these large markets are kind of pitted against the informal sector in a way. In Pune, the funny thing is that because we have so many waste pickers going to the doorsteps, the MRFs are a little starved of the high value, not a little, they're starved of the high value materials because all of it ends
All
up.
of it is already taken.
So what they end up with is essentially the multi-layer polymers or the metallized multi-layer packaging without metallized or with metallized. And some amount of EDHD, but very little, not too much. Now, they have no way to monetize it. And so the difficulty is maybe a little higher. And what they end up doing is that they end up tying with EPR organizations to sell it because now they need that number, that amount to actually sell. And this is where the organizations also realize, like the cement companies realize that अच्छा इसकी जरूरत है, इसको certificate चाहिए, इसको पैसा चाहिए. So then they start negotiating. I think the core issue is also what everyone has touched upon. I think in every single one of their points. What is the real cost of recycling? We do not know that.
We don't know.
And we don't know what is the cost of recycling in a sort of decent manner. Let's not say superior, Mercedes nahi bana raha hai, but in a decent livelihood manner. What is that cost? We don't know that. Until we don't know that, and until we don't enforce that, EPR has to ensure that in its supply chain, whether it's vendor producing or they're taking care of the waste, they have to ensure these minimum standards of decent livelihood are being met. Until then, we won't know the true cost of recycling. Because we minimum wage
If I
नहीं
may
देते हैं.
challenge you on that, I've been thinking about it. We learned our waste business from Kerala. I learned my waste business from Kerala. Okay. When I first went that's where the whole NIMBY book came out, Not in My Backyard and all the rest of it. Because there, in that city of Tiruvananthapuram, where they had no place to send the waste, they discovered that so they had to do home composting, and then they had to, and then the question, when I went to Kerala, I asked, what do you do with your dry waste? Okay. It was a very simple thing that the government had done. They had distributed to every household the kabadi wale ka rate card and their phone number and address of our local kabadi wala and said, "Aap inko phone kariye, ye le jayenge." I have been wondering, suppose we were to put together, I mean, we don't have any contact with kabadi walas. We have with civilized kabadi, modern kabadi walas, but not with the real kabadi walas. How do we actually, would their rate card not be the rate of recycling, cost of recycling? Add on to it another 10%, 20%. I mean, it's like, in this country, doing anything like that could become a 100-year project. Another approach would be to say, it's the same thing with the cost of agricultural products. Okay, what did Swaminathan say? He said this is the minimum price, MSP. उसके ऊपर 40% दे दो, cost हो जाएगा. Suppose that was the approach, Harsha.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that we need formal entities to do this work. I'm saying that the informal sector, let it remain informal or flexible. It has a lot of benefit that comes in. But why are they burning stuff instead of giving it to the corporation? Because they're not registered. If they're registered with the corporation could pick it up for free. Why are they employing children? I mean, they could employ adults, not children, if they had the margin.
If they had the
on the sale. But where does the margin come from? It's not coming right now. Like you say, it's a race to the bottom. The open market has made it so that the plastic recycling is at that level. But if we were to incentivize both parties, the informal sector as well as those who are mandated through EPR to work with each other. If the EPR guidelines, for example, I'm not talking about, says that anyone who sources through proper traceability mechanisms from informal sector participants who are registered with the UNB would actually get a higher percentage of EPR certification. आपने 1 किलो किया हम 1.1
That's
किलो
exactly what you're saying. The
set off
point-
दे देते हैं. So if that kind of a mechanism would mean that as ITC, I would be like, यार मैं इधर 4 रुपए extra खर्चा करता हूँ, 2 रुपए का set off मिल गया, 2 रुपए का PR मिल गया, I'll also be happy. And the informal sector participant on the other hand would say, let me meet the minimum basic criteria of not breaking the IPC. That's the minimum criteria. No child labor, no egregious business methods. Start reporting on basic data and start getting more income for exactly doing what I'm doing today. That could bring those two together. But unfortunately, the policy making for EPR has not been very inclusive. I'm not saying this from anyway, I'm saying this very clearly. The informal sector participants have not been invited to be a part of those processes. And that's one thing that could add value to the plastic waste management scenario going forward, especially from a policy perspective. And that is where CSE could help bringing anyone from the sector on board with the central government. Because when these are being thought out, I'm sure there are some of these ideas that might click and that might also work, and some which wouldn't. I just add one thing, the price discovery with ITC, we do only multi-layered plastic collection project. We don't touch any of the high value materials. The waste pickers get 4 rupees per kg. After 6 months of fighting, negotiating FGDs and everything, they were agreed to 4 rupees and they stuck to with it. The cost of collection transportation from their feeder points, which is Delhi ke Pune se, to a centralized facility and then on to the recycler, with everyone being paid proper minimum wages throughout. Those who are within the system, not the waste pickers, they get a bill. It's about 40 rupees. Sorry, it's about 16 rupees per kilo, and we get 4 rupees from the recycler. So essentially, the cost per kilo is 12 rupees, but the going rate per MLP is between 50 paise to 2.5 rupees. And so, how does that work? But again, what he said very importantly, आप मेरी जेब की 20 रुपए है, पर 20 रुपए में आपका 100 पैकेजिंग का बैग आएगा. What is that cost to the consumer? 50 paisa per packet of kurkure is nothing. It can be worked out. These costs can definitely be worked out.
Yes, please.
I have a question actually, is that, and I don't know whom I'm asking, maybe the CSE, is that, I think this EPR question is very important, and I think I've also learned a lot in this conversation. I think it's still an important. Having said that, and that needs to happen, I'm not taking away from that. Having said that, if we make a system of EPR which is working like Malai, then how does that disincentivize the FMCGs from using more and more plastic? So I'm in the sense we need a short-term, immediate response and mechanism. Absolutely. Very good question. How do we balance out a very efficient? We need an efficient mechanism. But how do we balance out an immediate, efficient mechanism with a long-term goal, which actually is kind of aspirationally the opposite of this current situation? How do we go from
Arshad
here?
has an answer.
One is how do we go from here to there? And secondly, I want to come back, and sometimes this number crunching gets to me also. But how do we come back to the people part of the whole story? We're not spoken of street vendors, for example, who are being made to sell all kinds of things in demand without a backup of some kind or the other. So what happens to those kind of people who are not waste pickers? There are other labor categories who are not waste pickers, and what happens to them? And I will go back to the upstream, because it's not digressing. The H is all polymer and nothing but polymer, and polymer is plastic. And what do we do to that? So I think our strategy needs to be multi-pronged, multi-level. It needs to have a longer-term vision and a shorter one. So I think, summing up for me, this is where I think the part is located.
Actually, Swati, brilliantly done, because I'm going to ask everyone to sum up now, one after the other. We've reached that point. And Harshad, you hold on to where you are, because I'm going to ask you to reply also to Swati. But Dharmesh, you're next.
I've just been listening quietly.
No, but very, very interesting presentation you made. Very interesting points. Yes.
So I would like to reiterate the point on transparency and reporting, because that is one of the key areas that is going to be discussed at the global treaty discussion. Because industry in all of this has to have a leading role. They have to come out, they have to report, they have to be transparent about what they're putting into their products. And this is what Mr. Varun Singh was saying, chemicals. Just imagine if we could, in that database, along with the database, have the producers and manufacturers publish the list of chemicals on the packaging. Because if it's food contact material, if there's chemicals are being found in that material, then the consumer has right to know. That is a very important element. And this is something which the industry globally is a closely guarded thing. No industry, right from Dow Chemicals to DuPont, they've always hidden this fact. Nobody wants to share it. The whole PFAS thing, the PFOA thing that's happening in the forever chemicals. So it is going to be an uphill task, but I think India is and they're looking at something like that. And of course, it's not the first country to do it, but I think in Asia it will be one of the few countries to do it. And if as civil society we can ask for that, additional thing, that would be a great issue. Then with MRFs, I think we've had a good experience and a very bad experience with MRF also. So the Hanger group of industries, the classic example, how it failed. RDA. It's actually MRF. How the it's dirty MRF and clean MRF, right? They call it, that is a dirty MRF. And a lot of municipalities are now opting for or giving projects to dirty MRFs because these guys are coming and telling them, don't worry about segregation, don't have to deal with citizens. Give us all the waste, we'll sort it out.
But wo, can I say, Dharmesh, wo jarur ho raha hai, because there are many people who still don't learn.
Yeah.
But there's a graveyard of such projects in the country now.
Yes.
Okay.
We have inventory of that.
We have done one and we want to do another one
Yes.
because we want to keep discussing this because, I'm not against incineration. I have to say, I'm not against waste to energy. My colleagues are often against it. I'm not. But for me, the Indian calorific value is just not there. We don't segregate the waste. By the time all the waste to energy plants I've seen are just full of everything trying to be burned, and the quality of energy you get is so poor out of that, and the subsidy that those plants have is amazing. They get paid 1,000 rupees for the material coming in. Then they are paid higher energy costs for the energy they supply. They get land free. They get. If I start putting that together, they're just not working. But even when I was speaking to the municipal commissioners in Talkatora Garden recently, one of them, the chief secretary of Andhra Pradesh, said, "Oh, we've sorted out all our problems. We now got these plants coming up." I just very politely said, "Madam, we love to learn from you because then you will be the only success in this country." Yes. Because every other plant that I know of and I have personally seen has failed because unless you segregate your waste to energy plant is not going to work. And if you segregate, then the question is, why will I burn it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I would rather use that product for getting more value addition, and I will only burn what can go co-processing, which I will send to a cement plant, which will give me better rates. So I think that myth is getting more and more burst, but we have to keep pushing and keep pushing, please. There's so many peddlers out there.
They're making 5 waste to energy plants, which is not fair. Delhi, their air quality is, they're making announced today that they're making 5 of them. I was shocked. So
जमीन तो लेने दो. अभी वो NIMBY काम करेगा.
Correct. So yeah.
So elections are रहे हैं, तो सब announcements होंगे.
Waste is a huge agenda.
Yes, that's right. So certainly with waste to energy, of course, ideologically against it. But
I'm not.
You're not.
I'm not.
But
I want to make it very clear.
But it is not
I just
practical.
think it's not practical.
It is not practical.
I just think it's not practical.
That is more of an argument.
practical to be supported.
Yes.
Yeah, why would I not? I don't believe in ideologically taking positions for and against. I think it's not me.
So I think that bit has to come out more clearly. If we do a inventory of failed projects, what has worked, what has not
Maybe
worked.
that's a good thing, Siddharth. We've been talking about that. Let's look at that more. And you're seeing this happen still, huh?
And cities are still giving
It's
projects.
such an easy solution.
It is a
हाँ, आप
solution.
फिक्र मत करिए, हम ले जाएंगे, सब जला देंगे, आपको एनर्जी भी दे देंगे,
Yes.
आप क्या फिक्र कर रहे हैं,
Yes.
क्या segregation वगैरह की बात कर रहे हैं?
So the narrative that basically we use to sell these technologies, and there are many other technologies, and I have seen this tendency in some of the recent visits. I'm not naming any city for that matter because that's not the objective of this discussion. It's a dangerous discussion that I've been part of. So basically, they are selling technology with the narrative that you don't have to
Worry about
worry
it.
about segregation.
Yes, yes.
You bring your mixed waste to us and we'll take care of it.
Yes.
And it is in this technology is gaining popularity more and more. I'll give you an example. Now artificial intelligence is being used for segregating at the dump yard, right? One, the cost of this technology is super expensive. So my narrative is being an environmentalist. Even if I spend 5% of the technology that I'm otherwise considering to put for a fancy processing plant, which an AI-based sorter on behavior change, it can do miracles. The second part of the challenge is that these technologies are mostly patent protected, and you will not have any option. Initially, you will get some carrot for free, like 3 years or 5 years of AMC for free. Beyond that point, for the entire lifetime, as long as the plant is operative, you have to rely on them for the O&M part, and they will just
I agree.
make you dance around their trees. That's it.
Sorry, people, I'm reaching a
Sorry.
point where I have another meeting to go to, so I am going to actually ask everyone for 3 points, but more also in terms of where do you see a common agenda emerging? So if you can tell us that also, I heard that from Swati and I heard that from Harish as well. Saloni, from your point of view, what would that be? And then we can come back to you people with some minutes on this discussion and then see how do we evolve this further.
So I think this space is really looking at what we boil down to is really what are going to be the economic drivers and how the regulatory drivers are going to put the cost on the right stakeholder. Or when I say the right stakeholder, the stakeholder that will actually help to will take on the responsibility or take on the burden of work in order to be able to deliver the desired impact. And I think that's where, and this is actually a very complicated conversation, and no single stakeholder group can inform it single-handedly. Because there are lots of groups that are stakeholders that are working, and we need actually platforms where we can have a diverse group of stakeholders really talking, flashing, fighting, and resolving these issues. Really understand who will take on this burden and how the regulations will help to enable the right stakeholder to take on the right burden along with the cost of the Good point. Very good. I think that's where this subsequent conversation.
No, absolutely. I think on each issue, perhaps. Nandini?
I must confess my ignorance on the on-ground portions of this discussion. It has really been a revelation. I have no idea about the cost dynamics. We've begun going into that, but I must confess I don't know much. For me, what I have seen so far, I place a lot of my faith in redesign. And I place a lot of my faith in very strictly zeroing in on applications that are essential and those that are not essential, not just for SUPs, but for a whole bunch of other stuff. Medical, don't touch. Maybe defense, don't touch. Aerospace, don't touch. But everything else, options are possible. Why are we not putting it into mission mode for big companies to come together and design a substitute for multi-layered plastics? It's not difficult.
No, but also the rest of the world has it.
This particular metallized form has.
I mean, they
remained a
have,
challenge.
no, but they have switched packaging.
They
So
do-
for instance, if you take the normal FMCG companies which do, I mean, here because it's cheaper, easier to transport. But if you go abroad, you will see, say the same chips packets, okay? They're not packaged in multi-layer plastic. It's always paper, thickened paper,
And they use monopolymer.
right? So maybe we should look for those. Also. So maybe we should-
Some
that's another
companies are,
question
you're
that we
right,
should-
some companies are doing monopolymer.
But then I think the question is, what happens? Okay, that's a very good question. What happens to multi-layered plastics in other parts of the world? Is it incinerable? Is that where it goes? Is collected collection capacity
That's the
better?
proportion.
Okay.
We have a far greater proportion of flexible packaging here. And much of that is multi-layer and multi-layer polymer with metal, not just multi-polymer. Multi-polymer can be rationalized, but you have to put your mind to it.
No, good point, very good point.
Also, the application, we use it for shampoos, it doesn't get used outside for shampoos, so you processing it is very different.
It's also the sachet problem.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, sachets, I'm also told
That
by
is
Indian companies, never happens all over the world here because we have such a cost conscious audience. Sachets are what people can afford. कि मैंने 10 पैसे तो 10 पैसे में कुछ नहीं आएगा मगर 3 रुपये में कुछ खरीद लिया.
It's what the companies can sell, not what the people can afford. That's the difference, right? Inclusion in policy making is something that the informal sector will definitely benefit from.
But Harshad, if I may
yeah.
just point that out, I have to tell you one thing that I have found very interesting. So forget the Ministry of Environment, which is the standard setting agency in India. But if you take the ULBs and if you take the municipal bodies, okay, I'm not saying, India is never all good or all bad, but I have to say, the conversations we are having with ULBs, their appetite to take on board informal sector is huge, huge.
Absolutely.
And I can also see because it's cost effective.
Yeah.
In India, everything is cost effective.
It's a great draw.
Okay, I mean, you came in from Indore and you said the municipal commissioner told the guys from Agra so clearly to their face saying, "आप private को रख लीजिए, मगर 4 गुना ज़्यादा cost होगा. आप अपने लोगों से काम कराइए, informal sector को जोड़िए, तो वो आप afford कर पाएंगे." ठीक है? So I think, Harshad, in my view, and that's again, I'm looking at the agendas going forward. We did a report on the informal sector in useful ways.
Yeah.
I think further work on that, more work on that, looking at the success stories and the cost effectiveness of that exercise, but then also looking at what you were saying, which is how can you give that added oomph to it so that you can give them dignity of work as well.
So-
But I'm really impressed by that. I
so-
really
so
have
the-
to say.
So we would, I think it would be useful to also, so the policy is there, it's there, we have some rules, a couple of lines, but how do you translate that
How do
into
you-
action? Sure, काफी चीजें enforce नहीं होते हैं, पर यहाँ पे actual गाइडलाइंस भी नहीं, अगर वो भी हम काम पे कर सकते हैं कि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट से रजिस्ट्रेशन मैकेनिज्म कैसे बनाना चाहिए, how do you identify basically, it's a challenge, not what state government would do that. So these are things that could be worked on at a policy level. One thing is definitely, I think there's a perspective shift that needs to start happening for everyone to realize that RDF waste to energy processing are cheaper because they are subsidized by the ULBs and by the government. Recycling as an option is more expensive because it is not subsidized.
Very interesting.
Right? No collection is paid for, no transportation, no storage, nothing at all. And therefore, why not make that perspective shift? If we want more recycling, start whatever is the right word, incentivize them, give more space, make it cheaper, make it easier for the people to do the same kind of work, give premiums through EPR, so on and so forth. One couple of just random things. We found that 46% of paper was being recycled versus 37% plastic in Pune. It was not much better. We should talk about plastic, it is a problem, but in the EPR lens, we have to start looking at all materials because the chain is the same. You have to start looking at paper, oh, RS ka kya ho raha hai? And a lot of RS has plastic bonded to it, and this escapes the system completely. EPR I've already spoken about, but to Swati's point, I would say, I think the key word for the informal sector here is just transition. Sure, stop the flow of plastic at the production level, at whatever level, right? We are not here to really be able to allow that, talk about that policy, but as you stop the production, eventually you have to reduce it. Ensure that more primary recycling happens, so there's more money in the system and more livelihood in the system. Move towards reuse and move towards refilling, but then generate more service-oriented livelihoods for the same because who are depending on the classes. Train them, move them towards this. We're trying to do this in Pune, but at a very small scale. And in the same way, there are ancillary activities in waste which will always exist. We need to do decentralized biomethanation and decentralized composting at societies. Train the waste pickers to do the same thing. I'll make one point, maybe many waste picker organizations are going to do, but I'll say this is a perspective. It is the dignity that we want to build on ourselves. Of plastic. If we get money from good work, we will do it. But let it be linked to waste because it's what we know, it's where we exist. It's easiest to convince people to shift from doing dry waste to wet waste, as against from dry waste to sewing clothes. right? So there are many ancillary activities which is to be included.
That's really get in depth into what this all means. Yes,
Couple of points. So the first one, I think recognition and market-based mechanisms will not work in terms of price. I mean, almost all of our new EPR, not new, I mean, all EPR regulation is just assuming that market-based systems of price discovery will work. They have failed consistently, and you need a regulation because market is not working. I mean, you don't need the regulation in first place if market will have figured it all out. So, we have, for example, we have talked about numbers of plastics, but fridge today, the end-to-end PPR cost, which is very market rate, is 9 rupees. How do you collect 9 rupees per kilogram in fridge? I mean, even transportation is 12 rupees per kilogram, but that's the price at which producers are operating. And this is across categories. So we need to, again, this discovery of costs of goods circular is critical. And I don't think it's going to be a massive exercise. I think it's a 3-month exercise with right people bringing in the data sets. I have enough data sets to provide, and I think just on this table, you have enough data sets to get you the first reference number for any category that we want. So it's not a massive exercise, but it becomes a benchmark because when people know, okay, but today that reference is completely absent. And then because there is no reference, we always will keep on going at the lowest cost and the lower cost and the lower cost and so on. Second thing is, we need to be very cautious on whom do we call a recycler and how are we authorizing. While it is easier said that, look at easier ways of authorizing, but in other categories, I'm not talking plastics here, but e-waste, batteries, we are seeing a complete disastrous situation where you have more whosoever as recycler than any real recycler. So out of a few hundred, almost half a 500 plus recyclers, you can say maybe 4 who are really recycling, market or traders. So they are just picking waste and then selling it in an informal sector for all the wrong reasons. So I think we need to have very strong systems on what do you call recycling and why. So which means and it could be done either by data reporting, that you have very clean data sets coming out, which go in public domain. I don't believe each and every pollution control board will ever have the capacity, but if you create deterrence, that this data is going to be on the public website, अपने आप ही रुक जाएगा, अपने आप ठीक हो जाएगा, ठीक है? और simple things like have a live camera feed to a pollution control board office on a regular basis, nothing else, but just a live camera feed from every pollution control board member secretary office में लगे हुए हैं, so screens, and he can whenever, very simple things, but we have to think deterrence. I mean, for enforcement, but now I'm giving up my hope on enforcement. It's mostly deterrent. And because only this will allow level playing field. Today, even if brands, there are certain producers who really have the right ambitions, who want to do the right thing, but they are being pulled by, sir, because of this level playing field, absence of level playing field, the right guys are also being pulled to do the wrong thing. Instead of wrong guys being pulled to, so it's a complete reverse mechanism which has happened in the last 5 years. So we need to invert it immediately.
interesting. Interesting. Are you?
Yeah, I'll talk about compostable. So more stringent policy and control from the government for any alternatives to the plastics, because there are a lot of greenwashing, as I was already mentioning, like biodegradable and also biodegradable. So the labeling and the color coding which I suggested should be implied. And another thing that any new development which is happening in any country takes a while. We are just taking baby steps. So a lot of government municipal composting facilities are there. They're existing on paper, but they are not working. So all these government municipal facilities can be compostable industry composting facility because they work in the same manner. So all these put in place, we have a direction to work on. So that was given permission.
Anything you want to add?
Ma'am, I think a lot has been said.
Use the mic.
Huge agenda for you. Yes, please.
Use the mic, we have virtual part.
So I think a lot has been already discussed, and I just
Sukanya,
want to stay
questions?
connected to me.
Any burning questions? Because I actually have a meeting with Dr. Paul. Oh, huge. Yeah.
Just a comment.
Okay, so I take this one. This one from Janki. As a brand owner, how do I assure that if I get an EPR certificate of 1 metric ton, the recycler has actually collected and recycled that much of amount of plastic. So
This is what we have been discussing the
I
whole
think
day.
that's
Sanya, what I'd be grateful for is these are very important questions. Is there any way that you can keep them and Siddharth replies to them?
Yes, we have the.
Because we should make sure, will you please tell everybody that on site that we will reply to, because I also saw huge comments, questions coming in. You had an audience of 100 people constant, it has gone up to 300 at some point. So I think it's good if we were to keep engaged, keep reply.
Sure.
So we can't reply now, we're really out of time. But we will. But you have, please.
No, I
final
was
comments.
just sharing that, a lot of people who are here have helped me to kind of do this report, and I want to stay connected to them and take this discussion ahead. And that's it from my side. So,
So I mean, this by far has been fascinating. I have many old colleagues who are joined virtually, whom I had worked with, and they said, like, I wish this discussion was happening right in the courtyard of the Ministry of Environment, so that not for any other, it's not a rhetoric comment, but the kind of discussion that we had, and the kind of the array of stakeholders that we had covered, mostly the value that Swati has added by talking about that invisible link between petrochemicals and plastic is something that very often we miss out in any dialogue that happens around plastic waste. Our thought process begins, okay, I'm sitting on top of a garbage mountain now, what do I do about it? But in this discussion, we have practically discussed about it, and then Dharmesh has brought out the issue of how UNIA is trying to tackle this problem of controlling the petroleum. I mean, if I have to put out a list, I'll probably take hours. So I'm so grateful to all of you, for contributing to our research and for taking out time. And Harshad, Nandini, Swati, and Dharmesh have traveled to come to Delhi to be a part of this discussion. So thank you all so much, and thanks to the entire unit that I am a part of, and all other colleagues, and especially to my Director General, because the kind of insights and the critic, and she is the biggest critic of our own work. Make no mistake around it, right? So one report goes at least 3 to 4 times to her before she eventually clears it and she's satisfied with the answer that we give to the question that she asked. So thank you, ma'am. And a big thanks to everyone who made this event possible. So, ma'am, few last note from you, then we can.
So, for me also, I think it's been great learning, and I'd like to thank each one of you. I think what Atin and Siddharth managed to do was to bring together the full life cycle. You all represent that. And so I think we have also not seen the full picture. And I've been to meetings and discussions on plastics, which are often only about whether it's the municipality in plastic, whether it's about MRF, I think this is something in which, to me, and I would really be grateful if somehow we could all stay connected, because this understanding of the different aspects, I think, we'll be able to find some solutions moving forward. And that's what my request to Siddharth and Atin would be, that we find a way that we stay connected. Now, given all of us are very busy, and given all of us like to be more focused on things that happen, I think what we would try and do is to maybe try and break this up into the questions that were raised today, come up with more deep dives on those questions, and then based on that, bring the community together to discuss it further. That may be one way for us to move ahead in the coming year. Tomorrow we are having another meeting where I hope a lot of this will also be useful. We are, as I've said at the beginning, we have been requested by the Ministry of Health, not the Ministry of Environment, but the JJM, to help them to have a consultation on plastics, on dry waste management. Now that's going to be an interesting conversation, because primarily with ULBs. And though I think I would have asked most people to join as well, we were asked to give a list of who would be the other stakeholders, and I did ask Atin to ask all of you to also join. If any one of you can, I think it'll be good, because then we can also raise a more combined agenda with ULBs. What I'm missing in the room right now are the municipal governments, who ultimately are the ones who are dealing with plastic. And they're the ones who I find is taking much more radical views than all of us because they are the ones who are struggling to deal with it. And that's where the whole complete ban on carry bags, ministry says micron waste, they say nahi, complete ban. Kyunki hum nahi sambhal sakte. So I think that's where because they are the implementers of this. And that's where I think some further discussion with them in terms of how policies can turn more into practice and where are the gaps will be very interesting. So I look forward to keeping this conversation going and including with you, Swati, on the other end of it, the other cycle of it. So we will keep that conversation going and see how. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and thank you to the online audience for being so patient with us and for listening in and for sending us your comments. Please forgive me, we can't reply to everyone, but we will make sure that every one of you gets as much as possible as an explanation or reply possible, and that's it, that's responsibility. So thank you very much, everyone.